Right, so here is the Titan list. There are quite a few, and I did think that a fun one would be to add in the custom ones, but I think that I've come up with, because the stuff that this ties to is a potential D&D homebrew campaign. But I thought that maybe I'd leave that until it actually gets a bit established. Although it would be quite fun to throw some of them in, because I did get a little bit carried away with some of the ideas, and I'm already seeing one on here that I don't actually recognise. So I recognise most of them partly because I recently rewatched the series, but apart from that, and thankfully they are in alphabetical order, so we can begin. And for the nostalgia and the joy and all of that, Albion the Dragon Slayer, although the Titan name is pretty much just Albion. He has a really cool design for me, no, in my opinion, and he doesn't appear much, but when he does, he's always quite awesome. But I think just due to the lack of appearances and that we didn't see him that often, I can't really give him higher than an A. Love the design, love the style, but. And this is a personal taste, this isn't like a strength ranking or anything like that. And I've got to try really hard not to just base it off of the music for the summoning calls, because the vast majority of them would be ranked in the S and A's if that was the case. But yeah, that's more a testament to the music than it is the Titan. It's just a good blend. Um, but yeah, Albion, the aggressive warrior of um, LeBlanche, is it? I can't. His name's completely escaped me, but also briefly used by Sophie Casterwell in the series, and pretty awesome. Has the added benefit of being immune to mind control because he's a chiefly loyal warrior. Now, the next one, Amit Hearteater. I do quite enjoy the design, but the annoying thing about this is that he there's two he there's several episodes where he gets summoned, but there's two that scream to mind most of all. In one of them, he gets added with, or gets summoned in with some amazing music. The other is a little bit weaker, I would say. But as nice of a design as he is as a Titan, actually, as a Titan, it doesn't have a lot of feats, and it's kind of pathetic in terms of the ability. There's so many battles and things where it just kind of looks like he's just sort of sat, or shit, when it is kind of just sat there. So I'm actually going to probably, the design keeps it up a little bit more, so probably a C. Um, oh, Antediluvian, the Titan of Vlad Dracul, Vlad the Impaler, the Titan inspired by Dracula and all of those mythos. Only actually, I think, has three, maybe four actual episodic appearances in the show, so it doesn't actually feature that prominently, but is pretty awesome and incredibly strong when it does. And it's always a case of yeah, it's always a bit of, when he gets summoned, things are going to happen. And I mean, Amit Hearteater and Albion kind of, they've got pretty regular summoning calls, but Antediluvians of Make Them Tremble, it's gotta be an S. Not S plus, only S. Anubian. A Nubian's a weird one because of how it forms. It like forms through like multiple tiny titans. It's more of like an experiment than a full blown one, although I think it can be summoned as well. The biggest issue I've gone with a Nubian is actually similar to Albion. It just doesn't get shown that much. And I think that's what really lets it down, because it's a cool concept, and from what you see is actually quite a strong titan. And the way it gets assembled through the Scarabeast as well is something very, very unique. But you just don't see it enough. So probably see Arachnos, the legendary titan of the mind. Sorry for any arachnophobics. I mean, Arachnos is cool. It's not my favourite legendary titan, but it's certainly probably one of the most plot relevant of the lot. I think putting Arachnos in B is probably fair. The thing is that I really don't actually have too much to say. Like, he's key because of the plot relevance and stuff like that, but apart from that, it's difficult to really know what to truly put him as. Archwarder, a titan that appears a grand total of 3 times, I think, and every single time is pretty heavily plot relevant and does have a cool ability as well, but I think I'm going to stick Archwarder in B as well. I like the design, the sort of bestial plant kind of design. It's got a cool ability with the Disruption Pulse, the ability to make it harder to control strong or legendary titans, but held back from being any higher because of the lack of presence, really. But then at the same time, you can also kind of understand it because that ability can be pretty overpowered. Arc, the legendary titan of fate. I'm sticking Arc in D. Doesn't have a massive amount of appearance. Has a sort of background plot relevance, but outside of that, it's definitely one of the less developed legendary titans that you see. But yeah, it's a shame because it's a cool and it has a very cool role, but it's one of those that could have really done with maybe if we had seen a bit more of. Ariel. The titan based off an elf with powers over wind. And always gets summoned with that little laugh as well until he becomes power bonded. And even when he's attacking and things like that, there's always a little bit of a ha. Ariel is a high A, I think. Does actually get quite a few appearances. And yeah, is pretty awesome, but I don't think it's going to be too much than that. Right. This is going to be the first F tier. Ash. Ash has an okay design, but the showings are just... A titan that's bonded to probably one of the most destructive blood spiral seekers that you see in the show in season 2. And yet the showings of Ash are really, really weak. I think there's only about one measure of prominence, and the rest of it, she's just gets summoned and then gets taken out in like a single turn or a single move, and it's just no. And it has the cool sandstorm ability and things, but no, it's just why is the main thing. This one can't even remember the name. Sticking in C. Actually, C, because can't remember the name, can remember the episode and the role, and they do have an interesting focus safeguarding. I think it's King Solomon's tomb or something, and they are pretty strong. And I'm really wishing I could remember the name right now, and I can't. Alright. Is this next one? No, it's not a Freakkeen, it's Balanpire. The thing about Balanpire is appears in a handful of episodes. I don't think it's that many. Is one of Keel's chief bruising titans, and has cool abilities with the fire and a pretty demonic look to it, which it adds. But I can't help it. But every single time I just think of Balanpire, I just think of Mithras, one of the other legendary titans, just picking him up and just throwing him to the ground, which is, it's not. But again, this isn't a case of strength basis. This is a case of personal taste, and that is quite funny to remember and think about. But I think for overall design and things, Vampire is quite cool, and I think it's cool enough to just slot into the lower level of A. Base layered. The thing about base layered, and I'm going to have to be honest about this, is twofold. One was never, in terms of the original main or the main Huntik team, so if you count Den, then it's Dante, Locke, Sophie, Xalia, and Den. Locke was probably my least favourite, the least liked out of all of them for me. Had a lot of cool moments and things like that, but just the character in general was just there was some writing for him, and it's an animated children's show at the end of the day, but some of the writing was a bit awkward. I don't mean awkward in terms of weird or creepy, it's just the way it gets phrased, or it just seems so out of place. Like, there's one part where he just announces that Base Layered will stay behind to help with the Titans. It's like, you could have just instructed him. You didn't need to take it out to just insert that. So, and honestly, as Base Layered doesn't have a bad design, but I'd actually say I prefer the unpower bonded version to the power bonded. I'm not quite sure why that is. It's just this one seems a bit more warrior like, whereas I think they tried to make the power bonded version like look more physically prominent and stronger, but it kind of makes them look a bit awkward. So I'm thinking B for base layered. Right. Gonna do the next two in combination because one basically spawns the other. Is Basler's Hive and then the Basler Bug or whatever the name is. It's a... Again, they're both going in B. And the reason for that is the concept of having a mother titan spawn these sort of mini titans and things is... It's like a Nubian. It has a cool concept to it, but the difference is like, whilst it would have been cool to see a Nubian more in fights and things like that, there's only I think 2 episodes where you do probably see Puzzler's Hive. But because of it, and maybe three. I'm trying to remember one of them, but the factor about it is it's a support titan. It's not like a Nubian, which is like a proper fighter. This one is designed to basically just give a mobile presence to the blood spirals and allow them to reach their targets. And it's a cool concept, but it is designed around a support titan, which is why not seeing it as much. Same with Archwarder isn't so bad because it fills a niche. It's not like a Nubian who is an upfront proper fighter or things. But next up is the good old Behemoth, legendary titan of the body. The three OG legendary titans, the first ones you get introduced to, Arachnos, Behemoth, and one that's going to be coming later. Behemoth is the middle for me. And I think that's going to fit to a high B. I'm actually going to move base layer down one. I love the design. I love, for this case of the body and things like that, they go with almost like a large bipedal hippo kind of fighter and warrior. Is something that you don't see so often in animation or fantasy or things, to get the representation of a hippopotamus and stuff like that. So using that as the brawler and the strength works actually really well. But the thing that always gets me about Behemoth, and I know because it's meant to be the skies, the earth, and the people between, that's meant to be the reference and things, that Behemoth's meant to move the earth. So I can understand that reference, but sometimes, especially when you look at the images, like outside of the animation, having the giant sphere on his back looks so random. And it's just, I can get why it's there. It is thematic and it is representative, but yeah, it's just a wee bit awkward to look at sometimes. So we do have that dynamic to keep an eye on with it as well, which does let the Behemoth Titan design down a little bit for me. Right, I am going to cheat a little bit because there is another one further down here, but they fill the same role. And it's like the mini Scarabeasts that have the different abilities but also work together to form a Nubian. And it's a cool idea, but they are really just... I mean, they're just like a Scarabee Titan thing. I think they do have another ability to that. I'm foggy on what that idea is, but the primary one is just forming together to form a Nubian. Nice concept, interesting idea, but I think the actual final design is probably better than the scarabs themselves. So, next up, the first proper sort... Well, no, that's not actually true because Amit Heart-Eater's already there. The second organisation Titan, and one we see quite a bit, Bone Lasher. Bone Lasher has such a... It's not even really it's almost like something like Nurgle from Warhammer. It's disgusting, but in the best way for me. I've always quite liked the Bone Lasher design, even though the performance and all that is mixed at best. I would say Bone Lasher is cool, and we do get plenty of screen time with them as well. But they are more of like one of the grunt titans and not my favourite, but they are still cool, so high B. And, okay, Behemoth's higher, but... What the heck is your name? You're Klaus's little secret experimental titan, which I cannot remember the name of. Brahi, that's it. A titan that Klaus has that can effectively challenge like the proper golems like Meta Golem and things like that. Mega Golem. Meta or Mega? I can... it's one or the other. Brahi is cool. Is a cool concept, this like century brawler type thing. Has interesting dynamics to say the least, and does have a skill set, and also out of all of the like organisation underlings, Klaus is, well, firstly character-wise is one of the more significant, but is also, I just always liked him, the different idea, the mechanic, and that the intelligent focused one instead of downright skill. So I'm gonna put him in A. Breaker, Greer's Titan. Breaker gets so many signs, and or so many showings, and I love the factor that you basically have it that Dante and Greer in season 1 kind of form a true rivalry, but at the same time their titans do as well, Breaker and Caliban. And having the monstrous kind of bear fighter be tied to something that's more tied to someone who's more focused around order and law than actual chaos is a nice little twist. I think Breaker is actually the first proper titan that I'm... No. Actually, yeah, I would say that Breaker is probably on par with how much I like them alongside Albion, but just edges Albion out. I don't think I was overly keen on the power bonded form that you get with Breaker in later on in the show, but apart from that, his showing was always interesting to say the least, and just the tie with that rivalry and actually having titans basically be rivals of each other, something that the show didn't really do beyond that, which is a little bit of a shame. Beauregard gets like 2 appearances in the show, and one of them is really not much of an appearance, but is one of the few actual dog titans that we get to see. Has the interesting ability of speak, and is also a titan puppy, which automatically gives him bonus points, so... okay, I don't think that many bonus points, maybe middle B. Behind Bone Lasher. And Arachnos, let's be fair here. Caliban. There's no denying. Caliban, Dante's powerhouse, actually renowned in the Huntik lore and fandom as being, out of the titans that are the non-legendary or heroic titans, the ones that you can get numerous amulets of, is seen as probably one of the strongest combat fighters, and has so many awesome moments in the show, even before power bonding. And the power bonded stuff just adds. Even something as simple as when he gets freed from the stone gaze power, as Dante does a quick quip, and then it just switches briefly to Caliban, who just frowns, and it's like, yep, okay. Caliban Ocean Warrior. I'm putting in A. It's a type of Caliban which automatically gives it awesome points, but also The Ocean Warrior design was so cool, and I wish we got to see more of it. We do with the Coral Golems, we get a couple of other appearances with them, but the Ocean Warriors, we only get one appearance with the Caliban ones, and it sucks because they looked so cool. The sort of Atlantean version of Caliban. And Caliban in itself is based more off of like an Aztec kind of styled warrior. So, or I, I don't know if it's specifically Aztec, but it's from like the Central and Southern Americas. So, it's a cool concept, and I do wish we saw more of it than we did. Cavalier, the Titan who refused to bond, we see him for a single episode. Cool two-handed swords, suffers extensively from the factor that we only see him for one episode. So he's going. At least with Amit Hyde, we saw him a few times. So sorry, Cavalier. You're a cool design and everything, but we just don't see you enough. Okay. Cerberus. I think it's fair to say that Cerberus is an A. The dog of hell and chaos and things. And has some pretty powerful strength showings throughout a couple of times in the show as well, which does absolutely help the case here. It's actually one of the only tires that you probably see overpower Sentinel, which is interesting, although that wasn't on its own, but still. Who the heck are you? I think you're the other Guardian Titan, so we're just going to stick you down there. Same concept. They do have the names. I genuinely do not know what the names are, so. Right, we've still got quite a few to go through. Can't even remember who you are. That's going to be fun to come to. Chariot. I mean, Chariot's an A. Early on in the series, I think the voice acting was still finding its feet for Chariot, the only Titan that talks, and it does reflect because, yeah, some of it is a bit hard to listen to, but they do improve. And having the talking Titan with like the lost memories and things, it's a different little unique concept, and I do like the factor that they didn't at any point make him overpowered either. He can boost himself, he can boost a Seeker or a Titan, or he can take out another Titan, but anytime he uses his ability, it basically whacks him out. Is a nice way of balancing it, like, because there's a couple of times where he does one shot other Titans, but it basically takes him out of the fight at the same time. It just knocks everything out of him. And it was having the talking Titan also helps kind of humanize them as well a little bit. So, or ground them in reality might be a better way of saying it. Conquistador, the Titan who falls so much into that case of I wish we saw more of this guy, because there's such a build up to him being so strong and powerful, and yet he is technically in 2 episodes. Not that he does much in the first episode he's in. But the design for him, I just, it's something about it. The giant sort of mechanical conquistador, and even like the eyes within the helmets are like little cogs that whir around and move. It's just so cool, and just the guardian nature of him. I I do kind of question why they had a In one way, I question why they chose Conquistador as an inspiration for a chief guardian, but then when you also tie it to the fact that is connected to the Sea of Cortez and is connected to treasure and gold and that, then it starts to become a bit more understanding. Now, if I am correct about this, I am. This is Coral Golem. For me, Coral Golem is going just there. You don't. There's a few different appearances, but the thing that shoots Coral Golem up more than anything else is just the design. The sort of shimmering, sort of seaweed and stuff that gets attached to it, the damaged cape and everything, the ancient nature. Out of the three, and I would say even probably more than Metagolem, out of the three of them is the best showing at like this ancient, humongous stone-based century titan, I would say. And yeah, I you see him in, I want to say, 3 different episodes. You've got the same ones as the Caliban Ocean Warriors. You've got another when they enter the Cave of the Casterwells, and then you've got another at the Fortress of Iron Will that gets summoned. And they are just... Well, I'm not even sure if that one really gets summoned or more awoken from its slumber. But they are just incredibly tough and powerful. Cursed Archer. A. One of, if not, I think the only actual Archer Titan we have in Huntik. Or at least that appeared in the show. And I mean, shoot them down is a fairly evident summoning call for him, but like the undead kind of archer that is still lawful and aligned, it's just... He always also seemed more like one of the more emotive titans, like not by much, like not outwardly yelling and things, but the design with the face without it being concealed or things, it just allowed for a bit more emotive sense. And yeah, he was epic and cool and everything. Don't see him... How many times do we see him? I don't... There's confirmed 2. I think there might be one other episode possibly. But he just had the skill, and the energy arrows were a nice concept as well, and the fact that they could be used for more than just fighting, like then using them as a sort of wall-based platforming step to bounce off of. Yeah, they were cool. I am half... No, they're good in A. I don't need to bump any of them up. Yet. Dark Dryad. You know what? Dark Dryad's going in A as well. I think there's going to be quite a few A's. The sort of villainous, stealthy plant trapper. Always had cool, and kind of similar to Cursed Archer, is always one that always seemed a bit more emotive in their reactions and things. Unfortunately, don't see him short after the first few episodes of season 1, because... Well, actually, I think after... I think the last time you see them is episode 6 of season 2, rather. And you don't see them at all in season 1. So they only have a handful of appearances, which is a shame because, again, the pure elemental nature, but also having it focused around plants for a villain to use as ambushing more than anything else. So, but yeah, because the Seeker that it was tied to, kind of ends up dead. In a very simple way of putting it. I won't say directly how, but that happens. Dark Pharaoh. Usually deployed or summoned alongside a Mit Heart Eater a lot of the time, but unlike a Mit Heart Eater, Dark Pharaoh actually has quite a few decent showings to it. And the design is okay. I wouldn't say it's my favourite, but I would say probably just behind base layer for Dark Pharaoh. The energy beam, the flying, wrapped up almost pharaoh, like mummified pharaoh that's risen again. Yeah, it was interesting. The legendary Titan of Betrayal, Demigorgon. I love Demigorgon's design. I love how he gets utilised in the plot as well. Well, actually, I say that I love the design. The design I go a bit back and forth on. The focus on the plot, though, and the sort of abilities that he has is like this Titan of Betrayal. I would say, I think there is probably where I would stick him. The design is the thing that lets it down a bit, but the way, and not going to go into heavy detail about it because not everyone who maybe watches this has seen the show or things, or may have seen it but can't remember. But the way that Demigorgon gets used in the plot is so unique and just awesome, and it puts a really interesting twist on the story. So, but the other thing about it is Demigorgon does fall into that aspect of a Titan you don't see very often. I mean, most of the legendary Titans do. But the thing is that yes, A is a legendary Titan, and B is a legendary Titan who is pretty flippin' OP. So the fact that we don't see him that often is actually probably a good thing. Dendras. I think Dendras fits between Albion and Cursed Archer. The masked. I want to say puppeteer. I don't think that's the right term. I think there is another term. But has the dragons of ice and fire that it can manipulate and things, and then the ability to just control another Titan if they attached. The silent idea of him and focusing. Yeah, Dendras is a very, very cool Titan. Maybe a better way of doing this would have actually been to actually no, because I wouldn't have been able to come up with ones at the end, but cool, but seen more yeah, that would work maybe better for a strength ranking, and I might do a strength ranking for some of them, although can't really add the legendary Titans into. Well, I could, or do them separately, maybe. But yeah, Dendras was an interesting Titan idea and design. And it's one of the things I love is that some of the background ones, the ones who aren't the straight up proper combatants, the ones who have the more support abilities, some of them are probably some of the coolest in Huntik, but Dervish goes down with Ash. Really have nothing to say about him, to be honest. I don't even know how many times. I know of one appearance. I'm not even sure if there's more than that. There's just no real thing to say about him, really. Um, Divine Mirror Kagami. You know what? Before that, Ariel's going up into A. I've been looking and debating that for a while, and it's like, yeah, Ariel needs to be in an A. Divine Mirror Kagami falls into the same unfortunate trap that several others do, but even more so than Dog Dryad, because it's another organization titan, a really cool design, and has a really nice ability. But I think it's only seen in 2 episodes, so it's one of those that sucks because so much more could have been done or seen out of that titan. And I do love the design though, which does keep it up a bit. I think between Beauregard and Baseline, probably. Doberman, a really skilled dog-based warrior titan that is awesome in all the great ways, but I'm not even sure if we see him more than once. I think we might, but I'm not 100% sure about that. So I can't stick him higher than B, unfortunately. And I think him and Kagami. I do prefer the design of Doberman a bit more. Okay, might actually put him a little bit higher than that. There. Dominator. Dominator's going behind Cursed Archer. Dominator is such a terrifying titan that they encounter in season 1. There's a few different episodes with him as well, and in the original ones, I mean, this is the thing, is that Dominator is a titan that you never actually see get defeated in a battle. You see it get engaged, you see it get fought, but you never actually see it get beaten. And yeah, the ability of the spikes to send another titan kind of berserk or to disobey an instruction is a very, again, unique idea and concept for a titan, but also it just bodies half the titans it goes against, and it's terrifying in so many of the right ways. Although I have to admit, one thing that Dominator's design I think lets him down is actually the legs. The legs are like really spindly and small in comparison, which I do find a little bit hard to believe. But yeah, he's up there. He's absolutely up there. Now, Doom Warden, an organisation titan we don't see too much of, but tends to be paired with another one, and I am going to say flat out I have a much bigger preference of the design and the style of the other one than I do Doom Warden. The concept of having a giant key as a weapon is interesting, to say the least. I think Domin oh my god, Doom Warden is probably good for a C. I would say. Dullahan. Dullahan's the top of A. Can't go above that because of the limited appearances. Does have more than the likes of Doberman and Conquistador, but well, actually, yeah, they do. They have 3 appearances, I think of, but the fire face shield, the flail as the weapon. There's just so many scenes with Dullahan that I do love, throwing the shield, things like that. But it's also a scene in, I think it is actually the final episode of Huntik, where one from the side of good and one from the side, and a blood spiral turncoat basically turn to fight the massive antagonist, the betrayer and things. And you've got the 2 Seekers standing there, and then you've got the evil Titan, and then you've just got Dullahan standing behind them at the ready. And for me, it's an iconic Huntik scene of them just standing ready to take on this powerhouse of an ancient Seeker. And the fact that Dullahan gets to show there is something I do love. Because I think the funny thing is, he's one of Den's Titans. And out of all of Den's Titans, in terms of combat, I would actually argue Dullahan is probably the strongest. It just doesn't have that many feats to properly show that. And speaking of Titans that have next to not that many feats, a Freak King, the strongest Titan of Keong, that gets a brief showing after his lesser Titans get taken down. Like Cavalier, we don't see anywhere near enough, but I am going to give props to a Freak King that puts him at the top of C, and it's one of those rare cases where I will add in a bit of their power level. He goes a mono with a legendary Titan and wins. Like, it might be one of the weaker legendary Titans in terms of combat, but still. So he ends up going a bit higher. And I just realised my headphones are not properly connecting, annoyingly. Right. No. Hi S. I love Elf King Oberon so much, but I also hate the factor that Dante just randomly has him at the beginning of season 2, and it's just there's a couple of Titans. There's that one. There's another one that's going to come up later, where they get them. And I think even there's another with Sophie as well. They just randomly get them at the end of somewhere between season 1 and 2, and it's just never explained why. And I really don't like that, because they made such a conscious... The shower? Pebble, what do you mean the shower? And also, hi. Where was I? Yeah,